where you're sitting today, actually from this pole back that way, was the original schoolhouse on the hill that was built in the 40s. So the center of our building is relatively old. I hope that what you'll notice today is that it's actually very well kept and a nice place to learn. But it was in the 1990s when they added on to our building. And they added the 2-story, which is where you entered if you came through the front door. And then in the back of the hill, they added another 2-story. So we have like the tri-level thing going on, which is important to know in a little bit when you start your little venture out to be able to visualize that. And then in 2003, we opened the 4-story addition that is in the far back of our building. We also got a new gym, so we have an upper gym and a lower gym now, and that was the second one was built in the 90s as well. So as we've expanded, that in itself has been a challenge for us. Right now, I have a little less than 1,600 middle schoolers in this building. The great thing about that is they tell me I can house 2,300. Now, I question that. However, we have a lot of extra space in certain areas, and so you will see that put to use today, and I'll share a little bit more with you about that in a minute, how we've done that. We are a diverse population. Over time, you'll notice I started as the principal here in 2006. I had the privilege of being an assistant principal here for 5 years prior to going into the principalship. So I've been here 15. But this graph shows the year that I became the principal, 10 years ago. We had about 1,940 students at that time. We had just been redistricted a couple of years before when the Mill Creek cluster opened. Because prior to that, Dacula was it. There was no Mill Creek, there was no Mountain View, there was no Archer. Okay, so we were the middle school. When I was hired here in 2001, we had 3,000 children. And we did not have the 4-story addition in the back. We had more students outside in cottages than we had inside the building. We had a cafeteria that would only hold less than half of the student population. So we were going through a lot of changes. During my tenure, we have had 3 redistricting opportunities. But each time that happened, we changed, and you'll see the graph representing the dip in student population after another redistricting when Archer opened, and then when Mountain View opened, and how that pulled some of our kids and students. But each time that happened, our student population, as far as their needs, changed. We are a school focused on learning and personal achievement for all. That is a message I send every week in my student address, and it's on everything that we publish, because that is what we're about. And so as we have gone through our work together, our mission to support all of our students to be lifelong learners, to inspire them, to teach them to be respectful individuals, has centered around our staff values. So back in 2006, in doing this, we needed additional technology. Now, I am not a proponent of one-to-one technology. I will tell you that. I hope that's okay. I am not. What I believe in my heart of hearts is that you, in a classroom of 30, if you've got 10 devices, you can do very engaging, high-quality instruction and still keep, every child on task and doing their piece. Because at times, particularly in middle school, one-on-one computing can just be a toy, and it can be an issue that the APs deal with way too often. So through the blended learning model, we have learned, and are still learning how to take, say, 10 devices and use those devices well through different types of rotation models. And then we started, like I said, playing around with the project project-based learning and trying to learn as much as we could until we go through our training this summer. And so today, in the back of the room, you'll see some projects set up. Part of your schedule is a gallery walk, where students will be here to share with you their journey with project-based learning, and they're very excited. So that'll be a fun time for you to interact with some of our kids in here, as of course, as well as in the classroom. This station rotation is your typical rotation where you've got, say I've got 5 groups going on. There's something different happening in every group. The kids rotate through all 5. Okay? Very powerful strategy. It works well, depending on what your outcome that you're looking for, obviously. But the station rotation model is one that you will probably see today. So you can kind of scan down that list and get an idea of how many folks might be doing that particular model. Where we are really trying to get to, honestly, is the individual rotation. Because what you'll notice there, the difference in the individual is that a child only goes where they need to go. If they've already mastered the content, why do they need to go and lose instructional time, in my opinion, doing something they already know how to do? Unless you're taking them deeper, there's really no need. We need to move them on when ready to what they need. And so it gets to that individual playlist, and that is where we are striving. You will see some folks today doing more of an independent or an individual rotation, where they've given a formative assessment and they are truly differentiating based on how that child performed. That is where eClass and the tool becomes so powerful, because those lessons are already there and ready for the kids. Okay? Then you have the lab rotation, and that's simply as it's defined there. You can see makes sense. You take kids into a computer lab and you do one-on-one, more or less. There too, though, if you're really doing it at a high level, they're not all doing the same thing when they're in the computer lab. And then you have the flipped classroom, and that is the model. Some people have used it for homework type things. You go home, you do it, you watch the video, you do the activity at home, you get the initial instruction, then you come in and we check and that sort of thing. What my teachers have been trying to do is actually using it with them delivering the instruction via a video they have recorded of them teaching that lesson. What they would normally do is direct instruction, to do that guided instruction at the beginning, delivering it via the technology in advance. Then the kids come in, and based on a formative assessment, they're assigned some sort of activity to do. If they didn't get it, they're with the teacher getting that help that they need one-on-one or in a small group. If they did get it, they're ready to move on and they're going deeper. Okay? So those are the 4 models that we have been working on just this year.
did it last year, but it wasn't this big. Like the project, he's had it for like 3 years, but they usually just make the magazine. But last year, the kids came up with the idea to do a lunch party, but they did it. They didn't have as many resources as we have this year. Like we have the library. Last year they just had to do it. So this year, like we looked at the winners from last year. We got ideas about picking the name.
About how to research. We got a couple websites that we were like recommended to use. Like I just see you got two buddies. Yeah, and it was very self-directed. That's interesting.
Just having a decent presentation, like figuring out how to convey the information, and also the best way to grab people.
Yeah, we want to bring people to our booth.
We also want to look at it about it.
Yeah, you guys can grab a mustache and a hat. Of course, but only for the hat. There's a hat that comes along with it. There's a hat. Oh, wait. Was this the second year there? Yeah, I don't want to go hat. Oh, yeah. So on the same side. Unless. Who is this representative of?
I thought that it'd be fun because there were so many. It's like all the guys in the Mormon trim. They all had like amazing beards except for that one. That's good enough.
Who has a magical mustache? All right. I feel like this is really too fun. Yes. I feel so much better about my phone.
I do not do anything if it does not match their content. From nonfiction to fiction, everything we have done has to relate in some way. And it is super hard sometimes to find both relevant and rigorous texts that match their content at all times. And sometimes some of the issue is that social studies moves so quickly and we don't in language arts. And so we're stuck sometimes in a content for a longer period of time than what social studies is. But then that allows us to enrich the content as well. And in terms of planning, did you talk about that?
So our planning, we meet together, usually in the same room, language arts and social studies, so we're on the same track. And like you said, social studies does move quickly through the content, but we're still trying to, even if they're stuck on a certain area, like for right now, we're doing World War I and the Depression. My co-partner with language arts is still on World War I, even though I've moved from it. But I've seen such an improvement in the short answers on my common assessments, or even if they're writing in class, because they're pulling from me, but I can also read things that I know were from language arts, and I know they did in certain stations there. And so, for example, I wanted to work on political cartoons and analyzing them. I didn't have time, and my language arts co-partner picked that up as a station for all of 8th grade. So they got to still do the same thing, but working on paragraphs, analyzing evidence, and doing it with the language arts AKS. So it's been really nice as a social studies teacher to see the improvement with the students.
I think the most important part is probably choosing the right novels and short stories and nonfiction and trying to get that timing right. We had several times where we had to actually slow down on the novel to allow it to get to that point where the Russians were coming into North Korea instead of the Japanese, so we had to pause for a moment and we worked on something else. But the timing is everything, I feel.
Is there any kind of collaboration like that between science and language arts?
Not as much this year. I think our first task was social studies language arts. And I know in the past there have been multiple occasions where they've done PBLs together in all 4 content areas. And I think next year that might be a path in which we might head towards. I know for sure last year, even in 6th grade, they were doing volcanoes and we did the Dog of Pompeii to kind of match that. But we didn't do it this year at the same time just because we had to stick with social studies. So either direction is really quite simple if you're willing to put in the time up front and let the kids kind of do their own path.
Well, language arts and social studies have been working together. We were kind of tasked math and science to try to find some ways to work together, and it's been a little bit of a challenge. I actually teach accelerated science, and as does my math co-teacher, they're 2 levels above where a normal 7th grade math student would be. So that's been a challenge. Our goal was to have at least once each quarter where we got together and kind of did a lesson, and we have done that very well. You know, that once a quarter has not been difficult to do, and I know several of us are interested in trying to do it more next year. Mr. Love and I actually teach on the same team, and last year we did a lot of language arts science correlation where he would teach a novel that went together. So we've been able to find the time. This year with them trying to get so much with the language arts social studies, he and I haven't been able to teach as much together, but it's certainly next year something I think we would both like to try again, you know, to see if we can get it working where it's going in more than just the 2 separate directions.
We're only really able to touch on it a little bit this year, but we were able to bring in World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki with the study they were doing on genetics, using a podcast about someone who was in both class and how it affected his genealogy down there. So a small amount.
We all talk about a little bit the expectation. Oh, was there a question? Yeah, go ahead. You guys go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I've seen a lot of stations today, so exactly how often do those occur in your classroom, like on a weekly or monthly basis?
I can answer that. I teach 8th grade math. I try to do at least 3 times a week for stations. You know, of course, it's driven by formative assessments, and that's how we differentiate our lessons. So you can have a station with me, a middle of the road station, and then of course the higher level station. So it works wonderfully. I can't say enough about it.
And I do it 2 times a week. It's also in my goals for the year. And if there's heavy social studies content that I actually need like a mini lesson or a little bit longer than a mini lesson, I try to hold Tuesday, Thursdays for those stations, or Thursday, Friday, where they can rotate if they didn't finish. Sometimes I'll let them work through the whole class period, just have a set of stations for the whole class period. And sometimes I'll let them do 2 to 3 one day, 2 to 3 the next day. But I agree, it works so well, and I do it every single week.
And in language arts, it's difficult in language arts to sometimes assess low, middle, and high just because of our cyclical instruction and content. And so they're getting the same thing all the time, it seems, from elementary all the way up to high school. And so for me, what I try to do is have my low, middle, and high based on formative assessments, but they all look like they're doing the same exact thing in their groups. And in fact, even the template looks exactly the same, but some little things on there are different and based on where their level is and what they need assistance with. And I find that I do groups probably 4 times a week in language arts, and sometimes it's really important to know that your low ones don't need you all the time, and so to stick with your high group sometimes is important. They're usually the ones that aren't focused on as much because they can do it. Well, if you're challenging them so much, they can't do it sometimes. So I think I wanted to bring that up on purpose for our high kids. And I'm sure you see that as well on the gifted side of things.